All right, let me do a vocal video this week, which is a little bit of a report more than a vocal video, but we'll see how it goes. See if I can keep my ums and ahs down. This is from Patsy Rodenberg's The Need for Words, Chapter 6, Working Further with Texts, which, again, with this odd book, there was a gigantic hunk which was just bloviating, what felt like bloviating at the beginning. Maybe it was her setting down her thing and how she viewed the world, which seemed irrelevant to what we finally got into, which in chapter 5 is a lot of very practical exercises on how to work with text, how to kind of jog your mind, how to exercise your vocal range, a lot of stuff like that. And now we've come to that's 50% of the book. And now there's this last chapter, which is the last half of the book, which is bizarre. It's called Working Further with Texts. And this seems to going to be taking you through a tour of texts, of great writers, starting off with Shakespeare. Spoiler there, because not actually no spoiler there, because Rodenberg, she works at the Royal, she has worked at least at the Royal Shakespeare Company, and is obviously super. This is the pinnacle of a writer using language, and of using language fully, it all echoing through you. This was the great era of everyone spoke with great feeling and connected with their words, which maybe was the case. I don't know. Or maybe it was just a really great time for writers at the beginning of written English getting codified. But yes, so this is the need for words is born of a pressing need to speak, provided, of course, that we have something to say. In many instances, especially for actors and other public speakers, that something will be a prepared text, which is how she then goes with, in the act of speaking, we will all become actors. So throughout this section, I use actor to mean the wide range of speakers who have to do things with words out loud to an assembly of listeners. So we've gone from, we all need to speak, to oftentimes that'll be prepared. Oftentimes that's what an actor does. So we're going to pretend this is just, and suddenly we've switched to an actor class from the earlier chapters, which were much more, to be honest, it was soulless corporate entity who was learning how to speak in front of his minions and lead them into battle and speak compellingly to get promotions and all that kind of stuff. It didn't have anything to do with me. This becoming an actor doesn't really have anything to do with me, other than I enjoy watching actors. I spend a lot of my time, my entertainment time, watching actors act. I am definitely more powering through this section. The voice and the text should marry. So this is the idea that, when a voice that is lost or uncommitted loses connection with the text, and then loses connection with a text that eludes us, will never find a voice. So you have to kind of understand on some level what this text is saying. And a lot of this seems to be getting into that, of how to read a text, how to get it. With voice and text work, you must constantly explore and experiment, always in search of the right levels and balances. Many actors too quickly impose a meaning before letting different meanings reverberate for the time being. We write or speak in order to discover meaning by making connections. And then we get into techniques, like how does a skilled writer communicate. There's a lot of techniques, and we have a lot of stuff here of clues from great writers about giving you vocal clues to the speaker of like how to speak a text. So there's that. There's the barrier of poetry, because we're getting into Shakespeare here, and people feeling that kind of that thing of like, it's poetry, I'm not going to be able to get to it. And she makes the argument that actually, no, truth speaking, really core speaking, that is poetry, that is distilled focused language. Or distilled focused language is what poets use as their raw material to put into poetry, and then they take that and they have the structure. A structure can be, a rhyme, line length, rhyme, alliteration, assonance, repetition. Anything that puts words into a conscious pattern on the page can said to have a verse structure. So, just even a limerick. There was a young fellow named Paul who went to a fancy dress ball. He thought he would risk it and go as a biscuit, but the dog ate him up in the hall. So that kind of like, we've got the beat, we've got the rhymes in there. So then we get into the way words work, which is a bit of a repetition on some of the past chapters. You can tell that this is a section that I feel like this is an acting class that has just been slapped at the back of this book, because I don't know, just as filler, as extra value. But then we go into all the different kind of rhetorical devices that we use. So alliteration, the repetition of like, first letters, the first letters of thing. Anokothulon, this is a sudden change in direction in the midst of a speech or dialogue. So you go from one thing to suddenly, you switch over this way, and it's kind of acting, especially using acting stuff. Antithesis, a balanced verbal construction in which one part of word, the thesis, is set in opposition to another. The antithesis, for the purposes of strong contrast or ambiguity. So foul and fair a day I have not seen. I know that this is a joyful trouble to you, but yet 'tis one. That kind of those kind of contrasts. I'd see the brave day sunk in hideous night, loathsome canker that lives in the sweetest bud. We'll come back to that one. Assonance, binding together words with likeness of vowel sounds. So lake and fake, that kind of idea. Circumlocution, a wordy roundabout way of saying things. So you get that a lot with bureaucraties, that thing. Climax, when we speak heightened language, the words ascend step by step to and climax or a payoff. That idea, that kind of a structure. Consonants, the strong use of consonants and consonant clusters to produce sound sharper and often more severe than vowel driven. Brute, beauty, and valor and act. Oh, air, pride, plume, here, buckle, and the fire that breaks from thee a billion times told lovelier, more dangerous. Oh, my chevalier. That kind of thing. Echoism, so that kind of using kind of the same words, is when words consciously echo a specific sound for the listeners. Once upon a midnight jury, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there was a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, "tapping at my chamber door, only this and nothing more." Emphasis, when we're always placing emphasis on one word over another. Euphony literally means sounds good. Harmony is euphonious. So, but soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Onomatopoeia, that's kind of when simply used words are meaning, kind of given a name to the sound. Hiss, ping, bang, sizzle, gossip, thud, gossip. That kind of thing. Puns, get great value out of playful interaction of words that sound alike homonyms and have joking relationship. Puns are fanciful formations out of which humor explodes from the energetic combustion of sounds and meaning sense. And yeah, Shakespeare uses a lot of puns. And yes, we're starting off with Shakespeare. No better writer than Shakespeare. That he is part of a context she does thing. Why do we need Shakespeare? And we get into this whole thing of a lot of stuff about Shakespeare. Brevity is the soul of wit in Shakespeare's longest play. So speaking Shakespeare's text. To speak it does take lots of work and loads of practice. It's not enough learned in an afternoon, a weekend workshop, or from a book like this. It can be a lifetime's thing. things, I've done things. With Shakespeare, sense is always twinned to sound. Delight in the latter and you'll discover the former. So in some ways, it is one way of kind of getting yourself into Shakespeare, is to actually speak it out loud, and that it does become much more understandable that way. Or you, better yet, you get good actors to act it in front of you, and that can really help put it into high. It's difficult, like, oh, that's what he's going on about, because the actors have that properly in it, can act it out, and it really, really does. So we get a lot of stuff about Shakespeare. It doesn't matter which way round you do it, but you must find passion and govern it through Shakespeare's written clues. You must encounter and use the verse form, the iambic, for instance. You must feel the rhythm and the line lengths of varying sorts. You must learn to embrace the length of thought, which is an interesting concept here of when you're reading something out loud, you can't break it up into little segments. You've got to kind of like get the whole thought out, let the whole thought come out in the thing. And if you do it, if you break off halfway through, it really fucks up the line. You must need the words and imaginatively respond to them. You must see the images, the pictures, the words artfully conjure. You must speak, feel, and think simultaneously. You cannot think or feel outside the language, but inside and with and through it. You must never paraphrase a word or thought. Hone the words and images until they become very specific. They should mean what they mean. So this is things, this key points I stress to help anyone speak a Shakespearean text can be repeated with any writer. So this is something where maybe is useful wider, why you use Shakespeare, but Shakespeare is not, it's not just Shakespeare, is beat the lines to isolate the heartbeat of the text. Then ask yourself, is it steady or irregular, fast or slow, solemn or playful? Mouth the text to feel all the syllables and to experience how sound and meaning marry. Are you being asked to say very little or a real mouthful? A carefully measured phrase or a torrent of words? What do the words say about your character? Again, we're doing the acting thing. So, well, I guess it could be you're just talking yourself, and like, what does that say about you? What are you trying to get across about yourself? Speak only the vowels to release the feeling and the emotion of the text. Is the character full or bereft of either? Does he or she shun vowels, the sound that signals an emotional quality? Grapple with the physicality of the consonants. Feel the physical movement within the text. Maybe you are a character of action rather than indecision. Maybe your internal thoughts are in chaos. Whisper the words to clarify the thoughts, like an inner voice. This goes on. Embrace the long thought to recognize the distance you must travel. How much breath does it take to make this journey? How does it differ from other journeys in other parts of the text? Start and finish the line without falling off it in order to tick off the distance involved in speaking. Speaking Shakespeare demands, but then builds vocal stamina. Intone the text to free it and get the words out of your body. All of Shakespeare's characters speak in order to release their thoughts and feelings. And I don't know if you could say that in a modern context. See and experience the images. Shakespeare uses a high proportion of similes and metaphors, making abstract thought precise and concrete. Notice the speech and the urgency to speak gather momentum as the speech intensifies. Shakespeare compresses time as his dramas unfold. As time appears to fly, thoughts fly too. Note how single words must signal sudden shifts in thought and feeling. It is always startling to realize that Shakespeare uses more monosyllabic words than polysyllabic ones. They are quicker to speak. If you get stuck with a thought or find something momentarily incomprehensible or difficult, don't panic. Go back to the beginning and start to unlock the thought bit by bit. If you have to embrace the whole thought and use it to move the idea and feelings forwards. Shakespeare writes in longer thoughts than most of us today. Too many speakers become incapacitated by individual words and will need more breath. Learn the text by thought, not line by line. Thought by thought keeps the speaking real and honest. It also leads to a greater need for the words. They become necessary steps to a result or conclusion. take a complete and fascinating journey with the text. To speak Shakespeare, you must be intently curious about where each word will lead you next. And follow all of these suggestions, but make sure the speaking is at all times connected to the breath and with a free and placed voice. Don't hesitate. Don't worry about getting it right, but play. So there is all that. And then we go on to, we do the sonnets, which are very compact pieces of writing, often with one thought or, two thoughts or three thoughts within it, but that's about it. That said, it can be kind of, it can be thing. She goes into kind of like a description of sonnets, the rhyming scheme of a Shakespearean sonnet. And notice that the 14 lines are one complete thought. It is without a full stop until the very end. This particular sonnet, Sonnet 12. When I do count the clocks that tell the time and see the brave day sunk in hideous night, when I behold the violet past prime and sable curls all silvered over with white, when lofty trees I see barren of leaves, which erst from heat did canopy the herd, and summer's green all girdled up in sheaves, borne on the brier with white and bristly beard, then of thy beauty do I question make, that thou amongst the wastes of time must go, since sweets and beauties do themselves forsake, and die as fast as they see others grow, and nothing gainst time's scythe can make defense, save breed to brave him when he takes thee hence. Bum, bum, bum. So make some babies, because time is coming for you. And indeed, we go through this. She does a reading. She does a reading of the sonnet, and it's a good reading of the sonnet. Very much kind of going into it. She goes to now go back to the beginning of the sonnet and try something else this second time. Use the first tests to explore the language, how the language is chosen and used to convey meaning. Whisper the first line, noting that the fourth line is difficult to say. And although a listener doesn't know why the speaker is speaking the sonnet until the last line, there is signals to the meaning in line 5. The word barren gives us a subliminal notion of impotence and emptiness. With born on the brier, the pun on carry and birth gathers up the double picture of the harvest, but also one of a cart carrying a body to the grave. Born on the brier. So yes, I would have to look up. Well, here, I can do that right now, probably. Bier, which is a movable frame on which a coffin or corpse is placed before burial or cremation, on which it is carried to the grave. Old English and of Germanic origin. So that idea, born on the bier, born on the bier, pun on carry and birth. Also, so born is in carry, B-O-R-N-E, but also born, B-O-R-N-E, B-O-R-N. So that kind of, the puns can also, they could be silly, but they could also be, kind of chilling. The repetition of when at the beginning. So yeah, he goes through this sonnet. He goes through, precise using the language. How you need to, all your efforts must be active in pursuit of the last syllable of the last line. Every word is a step on the road to hence. This last word is also a kind of beginning, henceforth, from this time on. Have a go at this next sonnet. Once more, speak it out loud, and it's Sonnet 35, and we go through Sonnet 35. And it's definitely a lot of antithesis: roses, thorns, silver fountains, mud, moon and sun, clouds and eclipses, sweetest bud, a loathsome canker. This is where we get the loathsome canker. And we go through stuff of like how to read it again. So that is what this section is so far, is very much it's close readings on Shakespearean text using some of the stuff that we've used before, some of the knowledge that we've used before, like, whisper it, say it this way, use the say something out with the consonants. Notice that there's use of antithesis, of we're doing opposing stuff here, bouncing back and forth, stuff like that. Yeah. So I'm liable to kind of go through, just read this through myself, and I'll just come back with whatever nuggets I can find. Maybe a little bit more narrowly done than this. I feel like I've just kind of read through the book up to the point where I've read it. This is like the first 10% of the book. I've gone from 51 to 62% of the book here, and yeah, yeah, I think what I'll try and do is next time is I'll just try and note down some of the major points and put them on a piece of paper, and less flipping through the book talking about it. And yeah, I'll when we get to my no ums video this weekend, I'll read more, and I'll just think about, like, well, how am I going to deal with this rest part? Maybe I'm just gonna read it through, and that'll be it. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I'm feeling less invested in this part because it is so actorly, and while while that is something that's valuable as a speaker, just generally as a speaker, it's also not really to my purpose, and I don't know if I really want to do it. Though, I mean, I am a reader. I like reading Shakespeare even every once in a while. So there might be some value in get grasping it that way. I'll think about it. I will think about it. All right, I will leave it there. More videos later.